An Iraqi appeals court has confirmed the guilty verdict and death sentence against the former Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein.
Iraq's national security advisor said the court approved the verdict to hang Saddam for crimes against humanity. Last month, an Iraqi court sentenced him to the gallows for the 1982 massacre of 148 people in one Shiite town. Iraqi High Tribunal rules say the execution must follow a final decision on the appeal within 30 days. Ethiopian troops and soldiers loyal to the interim government are fighting their way through southern Somalia and are now within the reach of the capital, Mogadishu.
Soldiers of the Union of Islamic Courts are falling back, but they're threatening to mount a fierce counterattack soon. Overnight, Ethiopian and interim government troops made further gains in central Somalia, taking back the town of Bulo Barde from the courts movement. There's also been fighting on several fronts near the government's seat of power in Baidoa, and the strategic town of Burhabaka has also been taken. Further south, they're now advancing on the military base of Balidugal, which is just 100 kilometers from the capital, Mogadishu. Our correspondent Mohammed Ado reports from Somalia.
Ethiopian troops are advancing on three fronts in a decisive turnaround in the battle for the control of Somalia. The success of the Ethiopian troops was not largely unexpected and is coming faster than anyone thought. In the past 2 days, Ethiopian troops have taken up to 5 Somali towns. The other towns of Beledweyne, Bandiradley, Adado and Gelinsor in central Somalia, Burhaka near Baidoa, the seat of the government. News of the advancing Ethiopian troops has been received with shock here in Mogadishu. This is a city teeming with supporters of the Islamic Courts Union, and there are now fears that the city could be attacked by the advancing Ethiopian troops. Many Somalis are enraged by the idea of Ethiopian involvement in their country. The neighboring countries have fought 2 bloody wars over their disputed border in the past 45 years.
This is total aggression on our country. Ethiopia may be more powerful than us, but will continue to fight with our meager resources forever. We will not rest until we defeat them.
Ethiopia has always wanted to colonize Somalia. We will not agree to that. Even we, the women, are ready to fight Ethiopia.
The Ethiopian forces are now advancing towards the military airport of Balidogle, where Islamic court fighters are having to mount defensive operations. The Islamic courts are, however, adamant that the fighting will continue. The head of the court, Sheikh Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, describes his troops' retreat as a tactical one.
We have asked our troops to withdraw from some areas. The war is entering a new phase. We will fight Ethiopia for a long time, and we expect the war to go everywhere. I call upon all Somalis to give their lives and property for the protection of their country.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi says his goal is to severely damage the court's military capabilities, take away their sense of invisibility, and allow both sides to return to peace talks on even footing. However, many here doubt his real intentions. Mohammed Ado, Al-Jazeera, Mogadishu.
In Nigeria, at least 200 people have been burned to death in a fuel pipeline explosion. The pipeline was laid in a heavily populated area of Lagos. The Red Cross says the final death toll may amount to many hundreds more. One news agency photographer on the scene has reported seeing up to 700 bodies burned beyond recognition. The pipeline had been broken open by thieves, and hundreds of residents had gathered around to scoop up the leaking fuel when the explosion occurred. Floodwaters on Indonesia's Sumatra island have killed more than 100 people, and rescuers are searching for about 200 more who are still missing.
Tens of thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes, although the floods have now begun to recede. Most of the devastation is in the provinces of Aceh and North Sumatra. Aceh, of course, is still reeling from the tsunami which killed 170,000 people 2 years ago today. Hamish MacDonald has spent the day in Aceh and has this report.
Since Friday, 4,000 people have been stranded here in Kuala Simpang. When the floods hit, the entire town was swamped. It is exactly 2 years since the tsunami hit this province. To many here, the floods seem like some kind of sick joke. Down the road in Sriwijaya, Vitasari is trying to remove the mud. It seems hopeless, but there is quite simply nothing else to do. She shows us her house. It's still standing, but inside, the glassware is about all she can salvage.
The TV was here, so was the DVD. The computer was upstairs, and even that is gone.
The streetscape here resembles some kind of muddy backyard sale. The floods reached the roof of this house. You can see the watermark right there. Overnight, the floods began to recede, and now the family inside is just starting to try and clean up. On higher ground, the temporary shelters are popping up everywhere. At least 100,000 people have been displaced by this flood. Just as it was 2 years ago, Aceh is today preparing itself for the long and costly process of rebuilding. Hamish MacDonald, Al-Jazeera, Sriwijaya, Aceh.
Now, this isn't the first time Aceh has been devastated by floodwaters. 2 years ago, at least 230,000 people died in 12 countries in the Asian tsunami. Aceh was one of the worst affected areas. It was already struggling with the consequences of a 29-year separatist conflict when the giant waves slammed into the coast. Aceh was just 150 kilometers from the epicenter of the magnitude 9.15 earthquake that triggered that giant wave. Buildings were flattened. People, boats, cars and trees washed away in the wall of water. Entire villages wiped out. Some 170,000 people died. 500,000 more lost their homes. International organizations responded swiftly, and the scale of the disaster convinced independence rebels and Jakarta to make peace. But 2 years on, questions are being asked about the slow pace of rebuilding. The government-backed reconstruction agency is coordinating the effort. It says $2.2 billion of the $7.8 billion pledged has been spent. The biggest issue is housing. Building materials are hard to come by, and so are skilled workers. As a result, only about 56,000 houses will have been completed by the end of this month, and many Acehnese are still in temporary shelters. Despite the problems, many are slowly rebuilding their lives. Hasbi is a fisherman, and this is his story.
Saya nama Hasbi, tinggal di Lampuuk.
My name is Hasbi. I am from a village called Lampuuk. I am 60 years old. I am one of the heads of the fishermen here. 2 years ago, I became a victim of the tsunami.
Waktu tsunami, saya pagi-pagi bangun rumah jam 7, pergi terus ke laut, saya cari ikan.
On the day of the tsunami, I left my house at around 7 o'clock in the morning. I went to the sea to catch fish. After 1 hour, I felt a big earthquake. Big waves came. After a little while, it felt like there was an explosion in the sea.
Sudah meledak di laut. Maka itu saya tuju terus ke darat.
I immediately headed back ashore, back to the beach. When I arrived on the beach, I put my boat there. I ran to the place where my house was, but everything was gone. I looked for my wife and kids, but they were all gone. The house was gone. Everything was taken by the waves. My house used to be quite big, but now nothing is left but stones.
175.000. Saya dapat kekuatan tentang hidup terus.
I have found the strength to live on again. After the tsunami, I could not think anymore. I was so traumatized. My heart felt just empty. But when so many people, also from abroad, came to help us Acehnese, I feel much better again. I feel less tense.
Kepala sudah senang juga orang Aceh ini. Saya tunggu 1 tahun pas baru saya kawin.
I have waited 1 year, then I remarried. Because we believe that 1 year after the death of your wife, she will give you permission to marry again. Here's a little bit of money I earned today. My house is still being built by a Turkish organization. It has not been finished. In the meantime, I live in this temporary shelter.
Sebelum tsunami ada masyarakat di sini.
Before the tsunami, 7,000 people lived in my village. After the disaster, only 300 people survived. Now people start to live here again. We have 2,000 people now.
Ada 2.000 orang sekarang.